Hey there, I'm Summer with Hammond's Nest, and after sharing this project over on my Facebook page, my creative friends requested a tutorial. So here you're going to be seeing all the steps I use to create a Hello Sunshine round circle door hanger. So I've got a wooden circle. It is a 20-inch wooden circle. It's a 1/4 inch thick. I like to tell you where, what I'm using and where I kind of get things, and I'm always happy to share suppliers information. So let me know if you need that. I stained that with some water-based stain, and while that's drying, I'm hopping over to my computer to design some letters for my Hello Sunshine. Now, if you don't have a Cricut or a Silhouette and you can't do the vinyl lettering, you could come up with an alternative. I'm sure you could come up with something, maybe get some words that are already pre-cut in wood or something like that. But while that's working and cutting, I'm going to come back to my round circle because it's been drying, and I'm just using some white Waverly chalk paint, and I'm doing kind of a dry brush effect because I am going to come back and do a second coat of the white, but I didn't want just this full coverage covering up some of the stain. And you'll see kind of just as we move along the process what I mean by that. But I feel like less is more. You can always add more, but it's a little bit harder to take off extra paint. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a dry and come back over to my vinyl word. Now this is black permanent vinyl. So if you're not sure about the different kinds of vinyl, that's a whole nother tutorial, but I cut that on my Silhouette machine, and I'm weeding is what it's called, and I'm taking away all the parts of the black vinyl that I won't be needing, and that will reveal the words that you saw me designing on my computer. So now it's time for the final step with prepping this vinyl transfer, and I'm going to grab some clear contact paper and put it over the top of the entire design, and that will allow me to transfer it onto the circle later. So I'm going to set that to the side, and so when it's time to adhere this, essentially a custom vinyl sticker onto our door hanger, it'll be ready to go. Now, after that white paint seeps in a little bit on that circle, it's not quite as bright as I want, so I am going to come back over it with a second coat, and then I'm going to let that dry as well. Then it's time to move on to the yellow part, the bright, happy, cheerful part. I used a color by Folk Art called Turner's Yellow, and I really liked this, and it was kind of a nod to an artist that used this color yellow in all his sunshines. And so I thought it was really, really pretty color. But what you see me doing here, I'm working with a 1.5 inch brush, and I'm not using tape. Now this, depending on, how comfortable you feel with that, this is just my process. I really like the way it looks. I don't worry or fret too much about the perfect widths. I just kind of eyeball it, and I use my brush there as a spacer and kind of hop down to the next thing. And I'm spritzing water. That's what you see me spritzing there. And it's just creating more of kind of a watercolor look, so the yellow isn't going on just super solid. I'm not drenching it in water, but that's what I do to kind of move the color around a bit. So after that's kind of starting to dry, I went and painted all the edges down on the side where it falls off the edges, the white and the yellow, wherever that may be. So once that's dried off a little bit, we're going to go over to the sander. Now this is my look. You may have liked it as is, and you could have stopped right there. But I attached a 120 grit sanding paper sheet to my electric sander and distressed to my liking. And then I wiped off with a wet rag, getting rid of all that sanding residue, and let it dry. And then now it's time to adhere the stencil. First, I remove the backer paper, then I kind of measure and lay down, and that transfer tape is allowing me to lay down the design as a whole. That way you're not trying to lay down individual HELLO. It keeps it all together. It's really neat. I love my Silhouette. It makes my projects a lot easier. Then it's time to do some highlighting. Now the highlighting to me is where a design can really come to life. Some people may stop here. I love to kind of outline the shapes that I want your eyes to see and go back in those stripes, and I'm just adding like very, very wispy highlight lines with the black. Now you need to let that dry, and then I'm going to go back and add some of the same white that I used on the background, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to highlight over the yellow. The reason I like to do this is it sort of softens the edgy black highlights there in the lines, and I think it looks really great. Giving some more time to dry for all that paint, then I'm using a polyacrylic and I'm sealing it. And so I'm just going to brush that on until I've got a really nice coat. And while that is drying, it is time to make a bow. So I got a lot of questions about this beautiful bow, and I chose to use a lot of different kinds of ribbon. I thought it all worked well. I couldn't decide between lemons. I couldn't decide between bees and sunflowers. And so I just kind of use a little bit of it all. Now, all the strips in my bow will be 10 inches long. First, I'm going to cut this 5-inch burlap, cut it right down the center, use 3 pieces of burlap and 3 pieces of every other kind of ribbon that I chose. Then I'm going to dovetail all the 2.5-inch wide ribbon, so it's all prepped and ready to build. Now, here's the thing about my bows. I do a bunch of different styles of bows, but this is one of the most popular, and I'm just building it in my hand. I put the ribbon in the order on the table in which I'm going to build it, and I just go back and forth in my hand creating an X and building and adding in a little raffia. I went a little raffia heavy on this one. I thought it was going to be really pretty. And then after you've put in all the pieces, you're ready to tie it off with a little piece of jute string, and that's what you're going to see me do here next. I'm going to flip it over, give it a tight tie, and then you kind of fluff it out a little bit. You kind of give it a little twist in the center. You can kind of pick up on all the pieces and really make it fluffy. And that is really what I get the most feedback from, is how fluffy the bow is. Like I said, I like a lot of different kind of bow styles, but this one's super cute for this one. Perfectly fitting. Next, I'm taking a thicker jute string and I'm going to knot it on each end after cutting it to length. And I'm going to take a light duty stapler and I'm going to secure a hanger on the back. I used to drill holes into my door hangers too, but this works great. Next, I'm going to kind of decide where I want to put the bow. I decided to kind of offset it. I like the way that ended up looking. And so I usually just pick up all the top pieces of the ribbon and kind of get underneath from the last few that are back there and pop in some staples, and it is secure and it's ready to go. So here is a final look at this beautiful, happy, sunshiny door hanger. So you can see my lemons, my bees, my flowers, and I just think it's really happy, and I hope you enjoyed seeing how I do this in my process. I'd really love to know what you think about the project. I appreciate you watching. Be sure to check out hammondsnest.com for more creative ideas. Have a great day.